message. Thank you.
Wow, I feel like I'm in some heavenly club where it's just smooth jazz. Awesome. Oh. Recently, Chrissy and I went to my 45th class reunion, and as we walked in the building, I looked at Chrissy and I said, "Oh my gosh, we're in the wrong place." And she goes, "What?" And I go, "Look at these people, they're all old."
They're all the cool kids.
And she goes, "Oh honey, come here, come with me. Come to the back of the room here where there's your picture 45 years ago." And she goes, "Back then, were you always trying to cover up that bald spot on the back of your head?" "No." And she goes, "Were you constantly making the noises like a coffee maker when you got up in the morning?" "No." She goes, "Was everything either leaking or dried up back then?" "No." And she goes, "Well, just walk around. You're in the right place. You're going to hear the 3 stages of every man. You know, youth, middle age, and oh my gosh, you haven't changed a bit." Which is true. Behind every great man is a woman rolling her eyes. My mom told me a story the other day. It was pretty funny. She said a couple of her friends who have been doing stuff together for eons finally kind of had their driving privileges taken away. So now they can only get together and play cards maybe a couple times a week. And so they were together and they were playing cards. And one of the gals looked at the other and she goes, "You know, don't take this wrong. I know we've known each other for years, and please, I'm so sorry." She goes, "But for the life of me, my mind is blank and I can't remember your name." And she said the lady just glared at the other lady for seemed like an eternity, just staring at her and glaring. And finally she said, "How soon do you need to know?" Yeah, I know. Oh, my friends, what an amazing time to be alive. I just can't believe it. I'm going to cover a little history today, and I'll make a first statement. I'll say, since the Anunnaki extraterrestrials arrived 460,000 years ago on planet Earth, they have terrorized and controlled humanity. You're like, uh-oh, Randy's lost it. He's gone crazy. Not really. The Anunnaki were called the gods of Sumeria, or, if you will, the fallen angels. And I found it interesting that the earliest civilizations known to us in the historical records, the Sumerians, have a religion that talks about these Anunnaki coming down from heaven and teaching them all these wonders of things. And so I thought, well, gosh, if this is really true, there's got to be some correlations in the Bible, right? And so I found a correlation between the fallen angels and the Anunnaki. It's rather coincidental that our faith, when I was growing up in the, I'm a recovering Adventist, as so is Carrie, and we learned that there was this war that ended in 1/3 of the angels of heaven falling to earth. And they came to earth, they said. But I'm thinking that they probably didn't so much come from heaven as they were kicked out of heaven. Now, so if you go to Numbers 13:28 in the Bible, I came across this scripture that said the descendants of Anak, who were described as giants. Now, I think it's really interesting, and you guys can go do some research too, and I'll give these pictures to Chrissy, but one of the things that's happening right now in China, these huge dams are bursting, and they're washing away whole hillsides. And what they're uncovering as these hillsides wash away are giant skeletons of huge humanoids that lived here, before us. And a lot of people, of course, are saying, "Oh, that's just Photoshop and all this stuff." But there's so much evidence out there now that they can't cover it up. So this is part of our history. And so they call these giants the Anunnaki. And it sounded eerily similar to Anak, and they were described as giants. So if you go and you read further, and you go to Numbers 13:33, it says that the Anakites come from the Nephilim. Okay, that's another word that's in the Bible. And there's a man out there that's done a lot of research. His name is Zecharia Sitchin. Has anybody ever read any of Zecharia Sitchin's work? Okay, so you know this guy focuses on the origins of humanity. And he was given access to stone tablets that have some of the earliest recorded human history etched on them, and he had the knowledge and the capability to transcribe those tablets. And so he's got a whole bunch of books that he's written, and they're translated into 23 different languages. They're sold all over the world, and people are starting to now come into this knowledge. And so he says that before the time of Christos, or our modern Bible, he says the Anunnaki came to Earth to mine gold, so that they could build this protective grid around their planet. Do you know what their planet's name is? Nibiru. Nibiru is now showing up again. It makes a circle, and it comes back into our solar system every 3,600 years. So they needed somebody to mine the gold, so they created us, these short-lived humans that had strong backs, short to the ground, and they would mine the gold. The Nephilim are mentioned just before the flood account in Genesis 6:4. Look it up. It says, the Nephilim were on earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went into the daughters of humans who bore children to them. These were the heroes that were of old warriors of renown. So if we take all of this together, the Nephilim and the Anunnaki, we have this war of heaven a long time ago, and we have beings coming down from the sky to be worshipped by the Sumerians as gods. And we know that the Sumerians called these gods Anunnaki. Is it a stretch to theorize that the fallen angels of our faith are the so-called gods that the Sumerians wrote about in their scriptures? Maybe, maybe not. Then we read in the Bible of a people descendant from the Anuks who are giant and strong, who come from the Nephilim. And that's in Numbers 13:32. The Nephilim are also called the sons of God. And the sons of God is another word for what? Angels. So it is clear that not only in language is there a similarity between the word Anak or Anakites and the Anunnaki, but also in the relationship between the Anakites being descendants of the Nephilim and the Anakites being heavenly beings. So I think it's probably that, like in the Bible, the Anakites are descended from angels, so are the Anunnaki, angels who have been kicked out of heaven, or fallen, if you will. The Anunnaki, interestingly, has been said to mean princely offspring. And who is also known as princely offspring, or the devil, or the prince of the sky, or Lucifer, the light bearer. So let's go back to the miners briefly. They needed miners to mine the gold. We were the early humans. And when we weren't mining, what else is there to do? Make babies! Yeah, you're either mining or you're making babies. And so every once in a while, when the herd got too big to manage, they would call the herd. Can you remember an event in biblical history where they were culling the herd, where they were going to wipe the slate clean, get rid of all the humans, and start over again?
The flood.
There we go, the flood. So they didn't like the number, and they were going to get it back to a manageable number. So they got Noah, and he built a boat according to the scripture, but it calls it an ark. And if we go back and we study some of Zecharia Sitchin's work, he called the ark a planetary type craft. And they took the DNA of all the plants and animals and all of the stuff so that they could recreate Earth after the flood cleansed everything. And they wanted to kill all the humans. But if you read Zecharia Sitchin's work, Enki, who was the scientist that created those early Homo sapiens, or humans, basically made sure that Noah and his crew survived so that that form of humanity could be restarted again on Earth. So, the question is, if they controlled humanity for all those years, how did they do it? Does anybody have an idea?
Fear. They were giants.
Around? Yeah, they're no longer here as giants, but yeah, that's a good. Sure, they're big. But around 600 years before Christos, they used the money system as their favorite tool. The handlers of this craft are historically known as what? Money changers. More precisely, change your money from your hand into ours. When Jesus stormed into the temple with this righteous anger, and he was overturning the money changers' tables, and he was whipping them severely about their heads with a lash, and they ran out of the temple, Yeshua declared after them, "Make not my Father's house a house of merchandise." So he was one of the first ones to literally chase out and try to destroy the money changers, and that's what the disciples were trying to do. So that's why he was truly crucified. It's because he was taking away the money changers' form of making a living, taking from you and putting it in their pockets. So it even goes further back, during the time of before Jesus Christ, 50 years BC. There was another man who did the same thing. Remember the Roman Empire, which reached such a pinnacle of, just wonderful things happened. Wonderful things were created. The economy was amazing. Everything was working well because Caesar took away the money changers' ability to create fiat currency, and he created a currency minted and printed by their own government. And the Roman Empire thrived. And what did they do? Caesar?
Render to Caesar that which is Caesar.
They murdered him. Once again. So, so it sounds familiar. It's a repeating theme. And the reason I'm doing this is because we have to sometimes realize where we came from so that we can never go there again. Because we're in a transition period where we're going from there into something new and something amazing and something beautiful. So, think of a more recent example of somebody who was trying to change the money system, take away the ability for bankers to print and mint money. Who was that man?
President Kennedy.
John F. Kennedy. Already had the bills printed. They were in the basement of the World Trade Center, and they were going to be distributed. And that was the weekend he was assassinated. So the money changers had long ago, about 1000 BC, discovered that control over a fraudulent money supply not only gave them control over the assets of the people, but in a very real way, control over the government of the people. They learned to make money over the backs of the people with the sanction of their own installed and instilled government. Does that sound familiar? How did they accomplish to maintain their power over the people for so long a period of time? What would you do? And what could you do if you just had a printing press and whenever you wanted money, you just hit the button and said print and printed out reams and reams and reams and reams of money, and you control its distribution? So they bought off governments. They bought off state officials, doctors, lawyers, judges, police, anybody that stood in their way. They gave them an opportunity to either be destroyed by them or to be paid by them. What a plan. So secret societies, universities, and schools were all taken over by the influx of a satanic authority. They maneuvered their deep state players into key roles, schools, universities, medicine. They played the long game. They bought up everything, and corporations all now were part of this huge, huge conglomeration. But they had a hiccup after World War II. Remember what trials went on after World War II? Nuremberg trials. And what was the major defense for the people that were being charged during the Nuremberg trials?
Follow the orders.
I was just doing what they told me to do. So, to continue their fraud, they had to come up with a different way of getting you to consent. And it's called signed consent. Everything is a contract. Chrissy talked about it in her last sermon that she did here. And this is key, my friends. When you go to a hospital, what you get is a signed contract, allowing them to experiment on you with whatever they choose to do when you're in there. When you open a bank account, the first question they ask is, are you a U.S. citizen? Look up U.S. citizen in Black's Law. It says that you are a government employee. If you're not a government employee, why would you say yes to that? When you go into a court, first thing they do is they say, are you Randall L. Cox? No, you are not. You are a living man standing on the land, and you know who your name is. Is your name Randall L. Cox? Maybe. I choose to be called Rat Man or Randy. They don't like that. And they'll say, no, well, for the course of this event, we're going to refer to you as Randall L. Cox. And go, no, that is not my name. My name is either the Rat Man or Randy. John, you can call me one of the others. And if you do that 3 times, then they have to accept it. 3 is perfection. You perfect it by basically stating it 3 times. When you sign anything calling you a person is not a living thing. You are basically consenting to something that they have just offered you by simply not understanding what the word person means. When you sign anything without attaching your copyright, just a little circle with a C in it after your name, which means this is mine. I own this. You can't use it for any purpose other than what I allow it to be used for. The Nuremberg Code, my friends, is one of the most important documents of our time. Does anybody here know what it says? Oh my gosh, I got to read you at least the first number 1 point of the Nuremberg Code. It's called, the voluntary consent of the human subject is absolutely essential. This means that the person involved should have legal capacity to give consent, should be so situated as to be able to exercise free power of choice, without the intervention of any element of force, fraud, deceit, duress, overreaching, or other ulterior form of constraint or coercion, and should have sufficient knowledge and comprehension of the elements of the subject matter involved as to enable him to make an understanding and enlightened decision. This latter element requires that before the acceptance of an affirmative decision by the experimental subject, there should be made known to him the nature, duration, and purpose of the experiment, the method and means by which it is to be conducted, all inconveniences and hazards reasonably to be expected, and the effects upon his health or person which may possibly come from his participation in the experiment. Wow! And that's just the first point! My gosh. Can you see the violations that are taking place in our world right now? Oh my gosh. It's insane. But you have 4 words that you can say, that you absolutely can say, and they can do nothing to you. It's like your silver bullet against the vampire. What are those words?
Biden is a clone.
I do not consent. I do not consent. It's that simple. You don't have to shoot anybody. You don't have to beat anybody up. You don't have to fight. You just say, I do not consent. I don't have enough information. I don't want to. So it's not what you do, but it's what you don't do. So they further obtain control through a process of easy money, tight money cycles. Anybody experience that? If you could fog a mirror, during 2006 to 2007, you could buy a home, but it was a flexible mortgage. They let everybody buy a home, and then made money tight. They raised the interest rate, and everybody lost their homes. So it's a boom and bust cycle. Those are the words they use. Boom and bust, the business cycle, inflation, recession, depression. And this keeps us all confused, and we're blind to their word magic. And the language may have changed, but the fraud is still the same as it's always been. And the world indeed is a much less happy place for it. So my friends, it's time to wake up. We're not living in a power over structure anymore. We're moving to a power with structure. That's what the Aquarian age is all about. So what do these people call themselves? Anybody know? These financiers, the bankers, the elite? Anybody know? What's the name? Illuminati, or the illuminated ones, right? It's interesting. The financiers were transformed into bankers during the times of the Templar Knights. They financed the early kings in Europe and were appointed by the Anunnaki. In 1776, remember this date, they needed a figurehead who created for them an action group called the Illuminati. And who was this man? Adam Weishaupt. And he was their subordinate to do their bidding. And he was the front man. And he went out and he created this force, if you will, this force to counteract what happened on 1776. That's why it was created then. And I'll get back to that. The modern day Illuminati are followers of satanic cults. And they are led by the richest and most powerful people in the world. Their order is filled with deviants who follow the dark arts, and they work hand in glove with the Jesuits, the Freemasons, in 1945, the CIA. They control the world by trafficking guns, drugs, prostitution, you name it. They are the power behind political assassinations, false flags, all the stuff that happens in our world that can't be explained, but you know there's something behind it. They are behind it. They've kept their secrecy intact because the public simply won't believe that all that is happening could actually be happening. You look at this stuff and you go, no, no, no. You don't want to know. You turn a blind eye. Even though it's been disclassified, and now you can go and you can look this stuff up, and there's absolute proof right in front of you. Nobody wants to look at it, and I don't blame you. But the truth is the truth, and sooner or later we have to face it, and we are going to hear it. People don't want to believe that the Illuminati regards it their responsibility to run planet Earth. These few people are so powerful and they control so much wealth and so many assets, they could be regarded as their own nation state. So they control everything with money. There's nothing left that has not been touched by the Illuminati. Churches, everything. All national Illuminati councils report to a Supreme World Council that acts as the forerunner that will rule if the New World Order comes into being. So how do we know this? I mean, I could just be a conspiracy theorist, right? I mean, you could just be making this stuff up. But the fact that it's now becoming available for anyone and everyone to find and read and research yourself means that it is now time for us to know this, to have this knowledge. There's a blog out there that's written by a man called The Hidden Hand. And he's an actual generational whistleblowing member of a ruling bloodline family. And this is an excerpt from his blog that I'll read for you today. Under his pseudonym, The Hidden Hand, he proclaims our lineage can be traced back beyond antiquity. From the earliest time in record of history and beyond, our family has been directing the play from behind the scenes in one way or another. Having originated from before the rise and fall of Atlantis, we are born to lead. It is part of the design for the current paradigm. Now when I say paradigm, think age, power over. There are 13 base or original core bloodlines. Hidden Hand also explains the current state of humanity on our polarized planet. He said thought, and we all know this, thought is focused creative energy. You get exactly what you put out. Why do you think the media is so important to our agenda? You have, as a society, in your hypnotized, comatose state, given your free will consent to the state your planet is in today. We have directed you. Tell a vision. Tell you the vision. We have focused you on our agenda. You saturate your mind with unhealthy dishes served up for you on your television that you are addicted to. Violence, pornography, greed, hatred, selfishness, incessant bad news, fear, and terror. When was the last time you stopped to think of something beautiful and pure? The planet is the way it is because of your collective thoughts. You are complicit through your inaction every time you look the other way when you see an injustice. You are a creator. You are a co-creator. It is your allowance of these things to occur. In so doing, you are serving the deep state purpose. It is very important to us to keep the polarization of the planet, people fighting amongst themselves over stuff that doesn't even matter. We have to keep it negative. That's what keeps us in power. So my friends, where are we now? Are we winning or are we losing? Well, the good thing is they, fortunately, are very political and a backstabbing group. And they have a dog-eat-dog mentality. And everyone wants to move up, whether they have to step on one of their compadres on the way. And they're vicious. And they put their eyeballs on status, power, and money. And they never openly discuss their agenda or their cult activities. Their image in society is all important to and illuminate. And they will do anything and everything to maintain a normal, respected facade. And they despise exposure. What's happening right now? Oh my gosh. So much exposure. So much exposure. Okay, so this is important, very important. Remember I said that the Illuminati hired a front man in 1776. What else happened in 1776?
Declaration of Independence.
Okay, now want you in your mind to go back to that moment in that room with those men that represented the colonies that wanted to break away from the mother country, Britain. And they were scared because they knew they were all going to be charged with treason and they were going to be put to death. High treason. And there was a man by the name of George Lepard, and he published a book in 1847 called Legends of the Revolution. And these men, he said, had gone into an upper chamber. And they had guards posted at every exit. Nobody goes in and nobody comes out until they had decided what they were going to do. According to Jefferson, it was late in the afternoon before the delegates gathered their courage to the sticking point. In other words, what was holding them back from signing that document? And the talk was all about axes and scaffolds and the gibbet. And suddenly, the strong, bold voice rang out in the hall. And these words were spoken. Gibbet. May they stretch our necks on all the gibbets in the land. They may turn every rock into a scaffold, every tree into a gallows, every home into a grave, and yet the words of that parchment can never die. They may pour our blood on 1,000 scaffolds, and yet from every drop that dies, the axe, a new champion of freedom, will spring into birth. The British king may blot out the stars of God from the sky, but he cannot blot out his words written on that parchment there. The works of God may perish. His words, never. The words of this declaration will live in the world long after our bones are dust. To the mechanic in his workshop, they will speak hope. To the slave in the mines, freedom. But to the coward kings, these words will speak in tones of warning. They cannot choose but hear. Sign that parchment. Sign if the next moment the gibbet's rope is around your neck. Sign if the next minute this hall rings with the clash of falling axes. Sign by all of your hopes in life or death, as men, as husbands, as fathers, brothers. Sign your names to the parchment or be accursed forever. Sign, and not only for yourselves, but for all ages. For that parchment will be the textbook of freedom, the Bible of the rights of man forever. Nay, do not start and whisper with surprise. It is truth. It is your own hearts witness it. God proclaims it. Look at this strange band of exiles and outcasts, suddenly transformed into a people, a handful of men, weak in arms, but mighty in godlike faith. Nay, look at your recent achievements, your Bunker Hill, your lexicon, and then tell me that you, if you can, that God has not given America to be free. It is not given to our poor human intellect to climb to the skies and to pierce the counsel of the Almighty One. But methinks I stand among the awful clouds which veil the brightness of Jehovah's throne. Methinks I see the recording angel come trembling up to the throne and speak his dread message. Father, the old world is baptized in blood. Father, look with one glance of thine eternal eye, and behold evermore that terrible sight. Man trodden beneath the oppressor's feet, nations lost in blood, murder, and superstition, walking hand in hand over the graves of the victims, and not a single voice of hope to man. He stands there, the angel, trembling with the record of human guilt. But hark, the voice of God speaks from the awful cloud. Let there be light again. Tell my people, the poor and oppressed, to go out from the old world, from oppression and blood, and build my altar in the new. As I live, my friends, I believe that to be his voice. Yes, were my soul trembling on the verge of eternity, were this hand freezing in death, were this voice choking in the last struggle, I would still, with the last impulse of that soul, with the last wave of that hand, with the last gasp of that voice, implore you to remember this truth. God has given America to be free. Yes, as I sank into the gloomy shadows of the grave with my last faint whisper, I would beg you to sign that parchment for the sake of those millions whose very breath is now hushed in intense expectation as they look up to you for the awful words. You are free. At the words, you are free, the unknown speaker fell exhausted into his seat. The delegates, carried away by his enthusiasm, rushed forward. John Hancock scarcely had time to pen his bold signature before the quill was grasped by another. It was done. It was done. The delegates turned to express their gratitude to the unknown speaker for his eloquent words. He was not there. Who was this strange man who seemed to speak with a divine authority, whose solemn words gave courage to the doubters and sealed the destiny of a new nation? His name is not recorded. None of those present knew him, or if they did not, one, acknowledge the acquaintance. How had he entered the locked and guarded room is not told, nor is there any record of his departure. It was a divine spark, the beginning of the experiment called America. So, my friends, we are almost there. The good news is we have entered the 6th day of the Ton calendar. We made it through the most intense cycle called the 5th night. It is always darkest before the dawn. The Ton calendar has 9 levels and 13 waves of 7 days and 6 nights. And go through each of the 9 levels. Each level you go up, time becomes faster, or rather consciousness speeds up. Do you feel like things are getting a little crazy lately? Like everybody is trying to get somewhere fast? For example, in the 7th level, when it took 20 years to go through each of the 13 waves, parents were much different. And we called that, remember, the generation gap. You had the 20s and the 40s and the 60s, and that was just one wave. Now that we're in the 9th level, and it only takes 20 days, you can see why everyone is going crazy. But while the 5th day and the 5th night are the most powerful of the 13, the 6th day, you will see more light or consciousness to help us see the plan more clearly and to help us with this incredible shift. So in the 6th level, in the 6th day, we had the Crusades. Remember the Crusades, which were religious wars. In the 7th level, and the time period from 1961 to 1981, we had the Vietnam War, drugs, rock and roll, and Hollywood. You. The 8th level and the 6th day was from November 2018 to 2019. We had a great economy. So each level we went up. It got a little better as far as intensity. But I'm so grateful. We did it. We made it to the 6th day. We started the 6th day on September 8th. And 20 days after that, we have the final wave called the 7th day, which is the fruit of the tree or consciousness. So this movie is finally coming to an end on October 28th, 21. In the Boston Marathon, it's symbolic of the runners being told that it's all downhill from here, right? There's part of the race where it goes down to the finish line, and everybody's yelling at you as you go by. It's all downhill from here. But we still have the 6th night. But I feel pretty excited. Because I know that this is biblical and that we are so close to bringing heaven on earth. As above, so below. On earth as it is in heaven. So now you've been acquainted with our past and the situation we have been manipulated in. Hopefully you are energized to fight for your freedom. Freedom must be fought for by ourselves. From here. Not above, not below. All of us together. We must simply say, no, I do not consent to anyone who would force you to do something you know in your heart and mind and soul is wrong. The time is now. We are the ones we have been waiting for. This liberation process has to be fought by us. Otherwise, freedom has no value and cannot last. I say fight, my friends. Fight like the 3rd monkey on the ramp going up into Noah's Ark. Fight. So I will leave you with this. I call it a sword for Aquarius. And if you will, let's do it like it's a meditation. Just close your eyes and just hear the words. Feel the energy. Yeah, feel the energy. A sword for Aquarius. You know the future is up for grabs. It will be either a golden age of light or a bronze age of darkness. Prophecy speaks of a time when a new age will dawn, a golden age of Aquarius, where ignorance and greed has a glorious light shined upon it. An age of medicine, healing, and technological advancements. An age of peace, truth, freedom, and spiritual enchantment. A triumphant age of human evolution. A transformation of the soul. A biblical revolution. You know this in your heart of hearts. I'm just reminding you. Yes, the age of greed and evil and darkness have declared war. To oppress, condemn, destroy hope for their measly status quo. Heartless monsters, they have to live, to deceive and destroy. But I say, stand up and rise. For God too has plans, and it's far greater than those. A shot to the dark, to turn the pages, a sword for Aquarius will be one for the ages. The potential for the human spirit is unfathomable. The glory of a heaven on earth is unimaginable. A new dawn shall blaze like the rays of the golden sun, and the mystic cords of time shall be undone and shine down on everyone. The light of eternal life shall illuminate every soul, creating an unstoppable force for spiritual growth. These days of old are beyond bombastic, unable to see the privilege and the glory as we drift amidst the galactic. Starry nights shall humble us as we journey through the ages. Life is an adventure. There's so much potential if we just but turn the pages. Look far beyond the illusions toward the horizon, where through the veil, faith, hope, and knowledge is the new vision. And so as the clock ticks and talks, the path forks before us. One leads down a familiar path, a path of darkness, a path of memory and pain. The other path, a road less traveled, that leads up into the light, the golden age, where everything is new, everything is waiting to be created in the grandest version of the grandest vision that we can collectively imagine. You know, it's not what we do, but what we don't do that will make the difference. Hold out your hands, my friends. Feel the weight of the sword as I lay it in your hands. Feel the smoothness of the blade, the design of the handle. It's not to kill. It's simply to protect. For you to hold and to place in front of you and feel its energy coursing through your body as you take a new path, as you walk in a different way, as you create and co-create a new world, a new existence. It is a sword for Aquarius, a sword of deliverance. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely, goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.